Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. First of all, welcome. My name is Brian Wharton. I'm the superintendent for Yelm Community Schools, and we're really glad that you are able to join us tonight for our community conversations. And I want to do just a little bit of history of this type of program. Before I do that, I have a couple of introductions that I want to do. First of all, we have two members of our school board here tonight. I want to introduce Debbie Edwards and Denise Hendrickson. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Do we have any other elected officials other than Sheriff Snaza up here? I'll introduce you in just a sec, John. Our community conversations program started back in 2018 and 19, pre-COVID. And that year we decided to do a 4-part series at a variety of our schools under the belief system that whenever we have a problem within our community, we solve it as a community. And so our message tonight is we have a community problem, and together we can engage solutions and we can make it a better place, whether that's our schools, whether that's our homes, our businesses, and the areas that our families congregate within our community. So we hope tonight that you go away with lots of resources, some answers, some information, hopefully questions, and you're armed with the ability to talk with your family members about this problem of drugs within our community. We envision doing 2 more of these community conversations during the course of the year on various topics, and we hope that you will look forward to those and engage with us throughout the year. Tonight's program is being recorded. I want to make sure everyone understands that, and we will post that recording on our website so that you can have conversations, show it to your friends, great night, popcorn night out, all those kinds of fun things. I want to make some introductions of our experts tonight, our panel tonight, and I want to start in thanking them for being here. We put this program together on fairly short notice, and it's so exciting when you make phone calls and the answer on the other end is absolutely, let's do something really good for our community. I want to introduce Thurston County Coroner Gary Warnock, who's on our panel over here. I want to introduce Thurston County Sheriff John Snaza. Thank you for being here. And also from Thurston County Sheriff, Lieutenant Tim Rudloff is here tonight. And from our team with the school district, I want to introduce Shannon Gubser, who is one of our student support members. She's a coach in SEL, or social emotional learning. She does a great job within our district. And also Skylar Cole, who is an amazing social worker from our district as well. We wanted to bring student voice into our panel tonight. So we asked 2 of our school board representatives, our student school board representatives, to be part of our panel, our moderators tonight. I want to introduce their amazing young people. They do great things here at school and in our community. I want to introduce Ileana Wall and Quentin Robinson. And finally, I want to introduce our CTE director and also our director of communications. She's serving as director of communications tonight. Terry Pablo will lead our program. So thank you, and we really appreciate you coming out, and we hope that you have an amazing learning experience tonight.
Thank you, Brian. So before we get started, we just thought there's a couple of things that people always think, and it never can happen to us, kind of thing. And so just kind of wanted to get us started. I think, Shannon, you have maybe a story that might help us connect a little bit here.
Yeah. Is it okay for me to play? Here? Here? Okay. Okay. So there are sometimes these events that happen in our life that we knew exactly where we were and when they happened. And so my grandparents talk about when World War II ended and they heard about it. My parents talk about when Kennedy was assassinated. We would talk about 9/11, and our kids will probably talk about COVID when they get older. On July 7th of 2010, I got a call about 9 a.m. from my stepdad telling me that my brother was dead. Shocking. In the moment that you hear it, he was younger than me. He was 30. He had used drugs since he was in middle school. And so to some extent, it wasn't a complete shock that if there was somebody that something had happened to, it was him. But I can just tell you that on that day, there were so many things that I will never forget. The phone call was just the first of them. Going and seeing his body, where it was, seeing my mom say goodbye to him, watching my mom at the celebration of life crumble, and then the days and weeks and months and years since watching my family. Those are all things that are snapshots that I'll never forget. And in the same token, I think oftentimes that we think that it can't happen to us. And so I'm going to ask the question and of the panel as well. And if you do not feel comfortable participating, please, you are not required to. But if you would like to stand, if there's been anybody in your life, somehow you've had substance abuse that has impacted your life, would you stand, please? That's a pretty big chunk of us. It's well over half, I think. All right, thank you. And so it's clear, not just from my story, but from us that are in the room, that this is happening here as well. And so it is in our community, and it is across the country, an epidemic. And so when Zach died, later we found out after we got his autopsy that he had died from a variety of drugs, but the main of which was fentanyl. And at the time, back in 2010, most of us hadn't even heard of that. It wasn't a household name like it is today. He had actually taken it from a family member who had a prescription. And I learned later that somewhere between over 50 to 60% of fentanyl or opioids that people get their hands on is either came for free from somebody that they knew, friends or family, or that they got it from them or paid for it from friends or family. And so my story isn't in isolation and not uncommon. There were over 2,000 deaths in Washington state last year, and it remains the leading cause of injury-related deaths in the United States. So with that, that is our why. That's why we're here today. It's not an out there thing, it's a right here thing as well. And so we're going to talk today about, we're going to get educated by some experts. You're going to get to learn about what are some of the things that we have in our district that are supports. And then we're going to end the night with hope.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Shannon. Appreciate you sharing. I know that's difficult. But we're going to get started. We're going to get right into the meat of the questions and kind of talk about why we all want to make sure that doesn't happen again. So our first question of the evening, I'm going to ask our panel is, what are the typical drugs that you are seeing being used right now?
Okay, so I'll take that. Tim Rudloff, I run our Thurston County Narcotics Task Force. Been in doing that for about 4 years now, but I've been with the Sheriff's Department for about 21 years, total law enforcement 30 years, and about half my career has been specialized in narcotics work. So typically, I want to break this up into obviously adults and then what we're seeing in teenagers. With adults, obviously marijuana is legal now, so we don't necessarily call that illegal for the adults, but for kids, that would be your number one. Obviously, our kids are using marijuana. When it comes to our number one drug for going back 20 years now, it has been methamphetamine. It's never been taken off the podium yet. Year to year, it has always been the number one drug abused. However, the way my current stats are going, this actually may be the first year that it gets taken off its throne, and it's fentanyl that would overtake that. We certainly they're using heroin and fentanyl, cocaine from time to time. That is still surfacing. And then you get into some weirder drugs, the MDMA, the ketamines, and LSD and a lot of other stuff that we still seize. But obviously fentanyl is our crisis right now. As far as a task force, and our job at the task force is to go after mid and upper level dealers. So we're not using, we're not, dealing as much with the street level user. But we know what the market is driven by, and right now it is fentanyl. Heroin has dropped off considerably. Obviously they're both opiates, and your fentanyl is just a stronger source of that. So that's what we've been seeing.
The second question for the panel tonight is, how are these drugs being introduced into our community?
Okay, that'd be for me again. I would take it. So, there's two primary ways, one primary way really, and then another way is becoming more prevalent because of the way our society is going. But let's start with number one. So, drug cartels in Mexico, point blank, 90% of your drugs of any kind illegal. That's how it's getting into our country and our society. They're being either manufactured partly down in Mexico with a combination of some drugs being ordered from Chinese markets that are sent to Mexico, and then the Mexican cartel does their thing with it, and then they send it up into our country for distribution. Obviously, once the cartels get the illegal drug product up here, then it branches out into your various mid and upper level, mid-level, even street level drug dealers, because all that, it's just like any other supply chain, right? It moves right along until it gets down to your storefronts and your vendors. So that would be in the legal drug world, that's your drug dealers. So that's how it gets in our community. In every community here in Thurston County, we have our drug dealers, and it's partly my unit's job and law enforcement in general to try to find them people and obviously take them away from that. The second one is becoming more prevalent because of how our society, is more technical now and online. You can order a lot more stuff. So we've had cases, and the U.S. Postal Service deals with cases daily where illegal drugs are being sent in the mail system. So that's another way that somebody might just go on a dark website and be able to order some of these illegal drugs, fentanyl, LSD, just about anything you can order on the dark web, primarily coming again from Chinese sources. And if you successfully get away with that and you pick it up in the mail, well, then you have your product and there you go. So them are the two primary ways.
Okay, so then more specifically, how are our students getting these drugs?
Well, again,
They can get it from their cell phone.
there
Can
you
hear
go.
me okay?
Good.
No?
There
Is
you
that
go.
better? Yeah, they can utilize Snapchat, TikTok, Messenger, Facebook, all that stuff. They can type in some sort of code word and you can have it delivered to you or meet them somewhere.
All right. Well, with that said, how is fentanyl different from other drugs, and why should we be so worried?
Well, fentanyl is 50 to 100 times stronger than morphine. So if somebody thinks they're taking a Percocet and it's laced with fentanyl, it's 50 to 100 times stronger. So if you just quarter out that pill of a Percocet, this thing's slipping, you quarter it out and crush that, just the tip of the pin, you dip that, there's enough fentanyl in there to kill somebody. There's an example of how much it takes to have someone overdose.
So then it seems like a lot of these drugs are hiding in plain sight. How are they being disguised?
If you go back a couple slides, you'll see some that looks like candy right there.
There you go.
Yeah, it's made to look like candy, and it's more appealing to the younger kids, adults. It's poison. And they're not trying to kill you. They're trying to get you addicted to it. So you keep coming back for more.
So maybe in those smaller amounts when it's there so that it continues to grow.
Sure.
And so when we talked about the counterfeit or the fake, it's pretty hard for anyone to see that. But as we, the use continues, there's some statistics that you wanted to share. And I think we have a chart about that, what the impact is as this addiction grows. You want to move forward to that?
Yeah, so, I mean, we see pills every day and I can't tell you what's fake and real until we, we'll do a test and if it comes up positive, then we'll contact law enforcement and tell them, hey, we've got a bag of pills that test positive for fentanyl and turn it over to them. This is our current death rate for overdoses here in Thurston County. So if you look at 2019, let's see, it's kind of jumbled down there at the bottom. Deaths involving fentanyl were 10. Confirmed overdoses was 44. And then it just kind of skyrockets. Right now we're at 87 confirmed cases with fentanyl and we had 2 more this morning. So that's going to go up. And then we still have probably 40 cases that are still pending talk. So, and those were confirmed positive meth or fentanyl. So we're just waiting for the scientific lab to come back and that number is going to be updated as well.
So we're seeing, obviously, students have access to it. It's very prominent in conversations. It's everyday kind of conversation. It's not something that people talk about behind people's backs anymore. It's a conversation that's out there.
Sure.
And so we've seen some of that, but I'm going to kind of turn over to Shannon and Skylar and ask, in addition to the fact that it looks like candy and that it looks like every common day kind of thing, what makes a student vulnerable to start using or get to abusing a substance?
There are lots of things which might not feel good to hear. I think we often think about like the friends our kids have or who they're associating with or what they have seen normalized on TV or movies. But additionally, we want to think about having existing mental health concerns such as depression, anxiety, or ADHD. Any substance use, be it pills or alcohol or marijuana, gives you a sense of altered consciousness for a period of time that lets you cope, change how you feel, or check out for a period of time. And for folks that don't have a means of coping with their mental health concerns or treatment for that, drugs can be one way to deal with those symptoms. Another risk factor would be having a history of substance disorders within your family or other addictive behaviors like gambling, food, sex, other kinds of addiction throughout your family. Past trauma. Unfortunately, we all just went through the trauma of COVID and the way that changed our lives. So everyone, to some extent, is walking around with a little bit of strain in their lives. But other kinds of trauma like death, divorce, abuse, again, leading to mental health concerns or not having the skills needed to cope. Having other kinds of addictive personalities, being highly emotional, dysregulated, getting interested in things really quickly, making really intense emotional bonds with other people, that kind of addictive personality that you might have heard of. And then social isolation is something that it's not up on our slide, but I thought about it when we were reviewing earlier. What we've noticed as educators is that our kids are struggling from the amount of time they've not spent socializing with their peers in the last several years. And so they are lacking in social skills that we might anticipate them having at the middle or high school level. And so they're experiencing more conflict with their peers, more stress. They might be more amenable to peer pressure than they might have been otherwise because they get with their peers and then they just don't quite know what to do or how to navigate conversations they might have expected.
Yeah, so for a student like myself or a parent or even a teacher, how do you spot the signs of drug use on day to day?
I'll add a little bit on that one. If your kids don't smoke and they're not diabetic and you see lighters in their car, on their dresser, little bits of foil, why do they have lighters if they don't smoke? Needles, they're not a diabetic. Why do they have syringes? And as a parent, it's okay to be suspect. And if you want to approach them, don't be an ass. Just, be open about it and ask the question. Parents were always suspect that our kids are up to something. And if you see a decline in their behavior, mood swings or disrespectful, be a little detective, and when they're not there, go through their bedroom. Just be a parent.
What I would add to that, if you're looking at this long list, is that there is almost complete overlap with the symptoms of depression. So kind of to what you were saying, don't necessarily go in with the assumption, unless you have found drug paraphernalia in your kid's stuff, that is what they are struggling with. Because you may very well be looking at a mental health issue. The only other reason I could see you'd have a lighter is I have a lot of kids that have lighters for self-harm, which is another conversation we can have. But so don't necessarily assume that that's what you're getting into in that conversation, but taking the time to look through their things, to be aware of who they're communicating with and what social media they have and who their friends are, kind of all the things we talk about for being kind of active parents and having an active role in our kids' lives. Those are all the things that you would do to be monitoring for changes in their social scene and whether or not they're using.
Yeah, definitely know the people they're hanging out with, know their friends, the friends' parents, see if you can find out what their history is. What do they do for fun?
I think any one of these particular changes might not be enough. It's when you start to see a trend, when you start to see some things happening. And so for myself as a parent, and I know many of my friends and many of you are in the room, we talk about this being a real hard conversation to have with our children. There's a number of them as they grow up, but how do you start that conversation? And I know, Gary, you mentioned a couple of things, but how do you start those conversations with your children to build that relationship, to have an open conversation?
So when we talk about conversations, it's as a parent, it is our responsibility to always have those conversations. The unfortunate part is that a lot of parents, when we do go to calls where we do find a young person deceased, it's the parent had no idea. The parent doesn't think about their actions or whatever social anxieties that they've been going through or haven't, because we all have busy lives and we don't want to bother ourselves with our teenagers and their friends, but we raise good kids, so we trust them. And the unfortunate part is that we also have outside influencers, friends, other relatives, maybe neighbors, passerbys, people that we meet at school. So our job is, as parents, is to always be inquisitive, to knowing what our kids are up to. And we're not to be their friends. And I think that's the hardest part as a parent, is you raise these awesome people and you're around them and they're so cool and you want to be their friend, but you have to realize that we are their parent first. And a lot of people mix up the two and we become their friend and we're okay with those mistakes. And is it okay to make that mistake? Are we going to be okay with that? And how are we holding our own people, our own kids accountable for their actions? And it's called being a parent. And it's about being involved with our kids.
And so I'll go ahead and add in there. I'll just tell you my own experience and how me and my wife did it. I have a 14-year-old now. When she was 12, in the middle school, we she goes to school in the Elma School District, and we had heard a rumor around town that there was heroin found in the middle school. And so, we essentially, it was just an average weeknight, and we sat down with my 12-year-old daughter and we started the conversation by, hey, did you hear about this? And of course she heard the rumor and, well, okay, what did you hear about it? And then we just generally ask her, what is it that you know about drugs? Like, what do you know about illegal drugs? What kind there are and whatnot? Because trust me, by 12, a lot of our kids are already have seen some stuff online or heard it at school. And certainly by the time you're a freshman, you've probably heard of most of the drugs. So first of all, that's a great way to start a conversation. Ask them what they know about it. You know, certainly if you may be dumb to the topic, and if you are, act dumb to the topic and let them tell you what they know. Then once my daughter got done telling me what she knew about it and how she felt about it, then we started going online. It's like, hey, let's go online together and research. Obviously, because of my job, I pretty much knew everything I needed to know, but I wanted to make it authentic for her and make it a joint thing. So we were at the table and we actually went online. You can type in the word methamphetamine, you can type in the word heroin, there's so many different sites now that'll tell you about the cause and the effect and what it does. And what I found surprising and was that every time we'd researched a drug and we looked at it and talked about it, and my daughter was just simply disgusted, like, why, Dad, why would anybody do that? And that was my point. Well, now you know, and I honestly believed that it worked, because a year later at 13, she had a group of friends that she really enjoyed spending. They had a lunch hour and then they had just a little bit of time before they had to go back to the class. And she came home upset one day. When I asked her what was going on, she said, Dad, I had to basically not hang out with my group of friends anymore because they all decided, my group of friends was vaping. I think it was just regular tobacco or cherry tobacco back behind some school building during the lunch. But she had tied that to, okay, that's how it starts and that's bad and I don't want anything to do with it. And so instead of being there where she knew she was going to get peer pressured, she just told the group, hey, if you're going to do that at lunch hour, we're still friends, but I'm not going to do that. So I'll be spending my lunch hour elsewhere. So that's just my personal example and how you could easily start that conversation with your children.
Can I add to that real quick?
Absolutely.
So I wrote down some notes and I'm gonna tail off this. A friend of mine, a former colleague, was a school teacher. And at the end of his remarks, he would go out with these words. And I asked him if I could use this. And I do. I use this phrase at all my speakings that I give at the schools. And it's basically me talking to the kids, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. So Tim just kind of hit on that, where his daughter said, I'm not having any part of this. So show me your friends and I'll show you your future.
Shannon, you guys want to add?
Yeah, we do have. Why don't you go and I'll go.
I'll wrap up.
Okay. So I actually was going to share as well. I shared with you my story. I have a couple kids who watched our whole family deal with that situation. And there was an incident that came up. And as we kind of do the pass off to Skylar, my first impulse was to respond out of fear and be angry and discipline. And literally within less than a second, realized that if I responded in that way, my child was going to try to then probably hide, because they wouldn't want to get in trouble. They wouldn't want to get disciplined for it. And so it was less than a second in my head flipped. Okay, no, that cannot be my posture. It has to be that inquisitive and that concern. Even in the midst of fighting my own fear, thinking of, could this be what happened to my brother? And so as we have those conversations, fear is that our own innate response that we want to have, but the consequence to that will be likely our children hiding from that. And so as you think about your posture as well, there's on this flyer that you got when you walked in, that first line that talks about keeping an open dialogue with your child. Skylar's going to give some great examples, but there's also a link in this document that gives you some conversation starters. And I don't know about you, but I like to memorize little things so that I can use them in the future. So you might choose your couple favorites and then you got them in your back pocket if it's needed in the future.
I'm so glad that you shared what you shared, because that was very similar to what I was going to say. Because I'm glad y'all all shared your stories. Because frankly, I'm not a parent. I'm an adolescent and family therapist. And what I have to work with parents around when they need to approach their kids around hard conversations is that you have to take time to look at how you feel about the conversation before you have it. And if you're one of those parents that's thinking about this hard conversation, you're thinking, well, I don't even know how I have conversations with my kids about anything because we've become disconnected, or my kid is older and operates pretty independently, or maybe drives themselves places now. So you don't have those side by side conversations in the car, or your family's too busy for sit down dinner or things like that. There is no shame in like Googling conversation starters with my teenager, because therapists do it too. And if you feel fear, anger, I think a lot of parents feel vulnerable and maybe ashamed if they're worried about what does it say about my parenting that I have to have this conversation with my kid about drugs. Or maybe you're one of those super open parents and you told your kids that you smoked pot in high school, and now you're like, well, I got to go be a hypocrite and talk to them about fentanyl in the community. You can acknowledge those things to your kids and still get across the values that you want them to have, the rules that you're setting down for them, holding them accountable for their behavior and their choices, and also kind of like showing up with how you feel. Because if you try and deny that, you are going to look angry or scared, and that will read to your kids as angry and scared. And if the conversation feels out of control, they're not going to be vulnerable and open up with you. And what you need out of this conversation is for your kids to know that you can have a conversation with them and that it isn't just going to be an anachronistic thing from the start, because that also isn't going to help them get help in the end.
All righty.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I really enjoyed that quote. It's very powerful. Like, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. However, question number 9 for the panel is, what happens if a student is found using on campus or even overdoses?
I'll take that one. So for you as students, if you were to ever see someone using on campus, or you thought that someone was overdosing on campus, your first priority is to get an adult. I don't care if you disrupt class or if you run down the hallways, yell and scream, find the first adult who can get another adult who can get to the office to let someone know what's going on. So anybody that's showing signs of an overdose or potentially having used is escorted to the nurse by an adult if they're able to move. If we found someone unconscious, that would be a different story. 911 would be called, and then we would notify an administrator. Other students would be directed away from the area to protect that student's privacy and to kind of limit their trauma there. The nurse would evaluate whether or not to call poison control or 911, depending on if the child is able to speak and tell them what they've taken, or if a peer knows what has happened. If they become unconscious at any point, we call 911. And then we would let you know, obviously, immediately. If we have a student who is unconscious and we suspect that substance use is a part of that, we do have staff on campus who are carrying naloxone, which I'm going to speak a little bit more about, and that is a state education policy that we are trained, and that there are people on every campus and a dose on it.
Okay, those are things in school.
So the next question is going to be more about how I only spend 6 hours a day at school. So I have a lot of time out socially with friends and not necessarily there. So what am I supposed to do out on the weekends or with friends when I'm recognizing all these signs or seeing these sorts of things and noticing them?
Yeah. So these are the signs. Being unresponsive, having small pupils, going in and out of consciousness or falling asleep, being cold and clammy to the touch, Respiratory depression, that's the technical term. Is that shallow breathing? Thanks. Okay. Or making choking or gurgling sounds. If you have naloxone, if someone around you has naloxone, it can be administered. It doesn't hurt someone if they're not having an opioid overdose, but it will revive them if they are. Stay with that person and call 911. And the Good Samaritan law is what was referenced earlier about if you are making a good, well, kind of want you guys to speak to it because it's like your area of expertise. So I don't want to say it wrong. But it pertains to you're not having to be fearful to get help for your crime if you were with someone.
Exactly.
It might be good for the audience just to learn a little bit more about, I mean, we hear it as Narcan. You know, it's available. How do we get it? Can you have it in your home? Is there anything you want to share a little bit more about what the average daily person might want to know about this?
Well, I don't know a lot about it. Maybe the sheriff knows more. I know we carry it and we've carried it for a few years now. We were set up, was it through the health department or through one of the, Department of Health? And I mean, it's I don't know exactly what it does. I know it's a blocker, right? So it blocks the effects essentially once it's administered. It's a spray, and just hold it up and spray it in their nose, and then it blocks the effects of the opiate drug. And works relatively, again, from the history of our sheriff's office. We've had quite a few saves, and we hear it too, actually amongst the opiate addicted population. They're carrying it quite frequently now as well to save each other. And so, you know, there's really, I know there's a lot of science behind it, but for us and for our sake and for the average person, you should just understand that Narcan blocks the effect of the drug when it's administered. And you really can't hurt a person administering that. And you can save lives, and lives are being saved with every day. So that's really the best thing you can do for somebody. Obviously, if you don't carry that or you don't have that ability, then it's like you would see anybody else, you know, falling off a ladder. 911. That's always your best. Like, call 911 if you see somebody and they're not breathing, they're down, they're unconscious, or, you know, having a lot of them symptoms that we saw. If you need help, get 911. You know, medics, police officers, we all carry that Narcan, and that's what you want to do, is get somebody there as quick as you can that can help.
I want to come back to y'all's question about the hours that you don't spend at school, right? Because being unsupervised, obviously a risk factor. Also, we want your kids to be healthy and independent and do great things in the world, which means there are going to be times when you're unsupervised with your friends, right? So it's okay for you to have those same conversations that parents would have with their kids with your peers. If you're worried about their use or you see patterns in them that you don't like or that are concerning to you, and you feel like just telling an adult that you're concerned about them isn't going to cut it, or you know something and you want to have a direct conversation with them, I absolutely would want you to tell an adult, because these are their lives and the rest of their lives and all the things they could or couldn't be doing with them if they die from an overdose. But if you are with peers that are using something in front of you, it's pretty important not to leave those people alone. But you also don't want to you should never feel responsible for supervising someone or like you are condoning their behavior. That's a conversation to have with them when you have the space and time to have that. But you would want to make sure that you can either get an adult there or that you are with them. And if you're offered something, both that you don't take it and you watch the responses of people that you see that do take it, because they might be showing signs of an overdose, because they have no idea what they have in front of them. I hope that that's really clear from the beginning of the conversation, that your friend might think that they bought Adderall off of a peer and they have no idea if that's what they actually purchased. Right. And to definitely, like, I think your vulnerability and your willingness to be honest with your friends is probably almost what they might hear the most in addition to their parents. And so it's important for you to feel like you can have those
So Skylar, I think you just led us into the next part of our conversation is that we don't want to get to the point where it's the overdose moment. It's how do we become preventative? How do we reduce the opportunity or access to any of these substances? And what can we do? And we could say as parents, but as friends, as, anyone in someone's lives, a relative, how do we start reducing this? How do we start and we've alluded to it throughout the evening, but what are we doing now to create some preventative measures, and what can we all do within our community, our schools, and our homes to do this?
Okay, well, y'all feel free to add in on this.
Yeah, okay, go ahead, Janet.
Okay. Essentially, I'm going to kind of go over what is on these flyers for you. And actually, you have even more on here than what we have on the screen. But first, it's that conversation piece and establishing that relationship and conversations with your child. And then also, are we intentionally checking spaces where substances might be kept, whether that's in bedrooms, backpacks, and are we monitoring their social media? Because as Gary talked about that, and I'll just be honest, that was how we discovered it. We had when we gave our kids cell phones, we had a contract and we said we would be able to check their phones at any time. And that was how I discovered that. And unfortunately, that's not a fun conversation to have, but it was the avenue because I had the proof. And so it was an easy avenue to that conversation. Are we keeping our own prescriptions locked up and disposing of them once their purpose is concluded? Because if it's easy access, even if, I only take one, and so getting rid of it if, like if you had surgery and so you have it in your house for a legitimate reason, but our kids are getting it, are finding it in those places as well. If we become aware of repeated substance use, are we reaching out to get help from resources in our district and community? So we obviously, every school has school counselors. By the way, I just want to sing the praises of Young Community Schools. Not every district has counselors in every building. We do. We have counselors in every building. We also, as of this week, will have mental health professionals in every building. We have 4 social workers. We have things in our schools right now that we have never had prior to this year and last year. We have had people that have come from outside of our district that have come in here and said, I'm not used to this much support. It has been in response to what we've seen. And I just applaud our school board and our leadership that we have because they have brought in and supported doing that. And we are seeing, that we're able to identify where we hadn't before. And also we have something to connect our kids to. In saying that, for who we have to connect to, our school counselors can connect to those resources, but you can also directly as parents reach out to those. And whether that is True North Mental Health Services, and in a second, we're going to talk about True North, whether that's the Chemical Dependency Center at St. Peter's Hospital. And then another avenue that you have down right before the last line, it's substance use at ycs.wednet.edu. This is a brand new email as of this week that if parents need to reach out to the district and they are needing help for how to get resources and navigate resources for their children, you can send in response to this and we will respond back to you with that. So you have you have many layers of help that you can access at any school in our district. Now to talk about True North, is Gina in here right now? Okay, the lady that you saw when you came in, her name was Gina. And we have a resource here right on this campus, True North. And I will just tell, that's on the next slide. I will wait until we get to the next slide so that I don't get ahead of ourselves. And then the last thing is, well, it's okay, Shannon, you can go back and I'll come back to it. Thank you. And then you as parents can also invest in naloxone to have available in your home. And on the bottom of your flyer here, it talks about having resources on hand and can share with you how you can get your hands on some of that yourself. Anybody else want to respond to that?
You said a lot.
I did, I'm sorry.
I know. So just real quickly, when I look out into the audience, I see people of all different ages. And a lot of you have already been through school. You already dealt with whatever crisis there was in school, whatever, if you will, drugs there were. In The nineties, it was methamphetamine was a big deal. Heroin was never a big deal, up unless it was back in the seventies. Methamphetamine is, came in, right after cocaine, and methamphetamine became cheaper. And so now here we are, we're moving into 2022. And we have the big craze about fentanyl. Well, has anybody asked what fentanyl costs? Anybody know? Because just a few years ago, here we were worried about prescription medication. It was $1 a milligram. So you'd see a Percocet or a Vicodin go for about $50 a pill. Well, now, and that's where we got the, kids going in and raiding the cabinets for the medicines. And that's when we started doing our drug take back, and where you could have their drug drop box where you could drop off all your unused medication. And that's when we started, we passed legislation to where now you can take all your unused medications to the pharmacy to where they dispose of it. But now, if as young people, if they want to experience what drugs are, it's $2.50 a tablet. Gary just got done explaining what it takes for one tablet, just the tip of a pencil. And a tablet, you quarter that up, that's 4 people who can die from one tablet. And what we are experiencing is that it's seemingly more and more people are becoming more addicted to the opiates, which is the heroin, but now it's the fentanyl, what it gives them. And so what I am asking is that throughout our lifetimes, we've all been exposed to drugs. We've all made our own decisions whether we want to use them or not. Or maybe we did, and then we chose not to use them again after that. But right now is the most important time because of what the death rate is. And not to alarm anybody, and Gary's done a pretty good job at it, not alarming, but unfortunately, per capita, per 100,000, Thurston County ranks #1 in the state of Washington for most deaths, overdose deaths with fentanyl. He said he has 87. He has 40 of them still waiting toxicology to find out what they died of. And unfortunately, we're already #1 just with the 87. And #2 is Yakima. So there's 39 counties in this state, and per capita, Thurston County is #1. And so what I'm asking is that all of you here, you can tell your friends, your neighbors what you experience, but at least go home and talk to your kids about what drugs are, what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, kind of like what Tim did with his daughter, or what Gary did when he's talking about his neighbor, when you talk to kids, because that's the most important thing we do is talk about it. Communication, most important thing we could ever do is communicate about what's going on. Narcan, naloxone, when we first got that, our deputies were saving quite a few lives. And they themselves said, we're tired of getting life-saving awards for saving a person's life. And the reason is because most all of them whose life they save, they get up and walk away and don't even want to go to the hospital for treatment because they refuse treatment. That's what we're seeing on the street. And what they're doing now in our homeless camps is that they're actually distributing Narcan to the homeless people because they do know that there is a drug problem in our homeless camps. That's what we've become already, is that they're already accepting that people are going to overdose and they just want people to have the Narcan to save their lives. And what I'm asking is that we educate our kids so that they don't go down that road, because it is an addiction and it is very hard to get off of heroin. If you've ever met anybody who is addicted to heroin, it is a lifetime of struggles. So anyway. Absolutely.
What do you want to talk? Oh, okay. So if your kid is struggling or you have questions or you want to problem solve how to have this really hard conversation with your kids, or you want to seek mental health support or substance support for your kids and you want a one-stop shop, you can call your kid's school counselor. When we have really, when our counselors need additional support, when we need more help to navigate the mental health system with private insurance or state insurance, or we have things really at a crisis level, I do a lot of coaching with our school counselors and our administrators in crisis and just around how to approach particular students with big concerns. Please don't be scared if the social worker from Yale never calls your house. Think mental health social worker, not kid takeaway social worker. I have to explain that to kids constantly. But we are here to support in that venue. And then as they were speaking about before, we have partnerships with multiple mental health agencies in the area to provide services on campus. Kind of each building has a different mix of services right now. So what's available to folks with different kinds of insurance is varied in each building. But if you need help identifying what is available in the area with your insurance, call your kids counselor and we'll work to make that happen. We have our community outreach specialists that are also accessible at both middle schools and the high school. Kids can actually just walk into their offices. But you can also reach those folks through the kids school counselor if they're a material to be part of your family, Spoke about Trump already.
Yeah, would love to talk about True North for a minute. If Shannon, I know we can't click on that True North, but I want to share with you what's underneath where you can see where it's blue. So True North has been on Yelm High School's campus since 2017. And back in 2017, they served 52 youth. And then the next year it was 66. The next year it was 32. The next year was 11. That was the year of COVID. The next year was 25. So that was last year when we came back. And this year is 11. Okay, so I know because you don't see it on the screen with your eyeballs that, so it went from 52, 66, 32, 11, 25, 11. If you looked at that data, you might think, hey, Yelm's doing great. We have a decrease in drug use. I would probably say that's not what's happening. I would probably say what is happening is that we are not getting referrals in because we're either not aware or perhaps parents and kids have not agreed to those referrals, but we have right on this campus availability of True North. And so parents, if you are seeing repeated drug use with your child, we can make those referrals happen here. That can happen through the school counselor, that can happen through our social workers who can help navigate that, but we have those resources here. And then the other two things that were on here as well is, we talk about that word prevention. And we, for the last few years, if we were just being honest, and probably you as parents feel the same way, we have been reactive because the overwhelming amount of need has been more than what we could really handle. We are now finally starting to get those resources and supports in place, and we are able to be proactive. And as a district, as of 2 years ago, at our elementary schools, all students are receiving social and emotional learning curriculum, which is teaching them social and emotional learning, so their emotion regulation and problem solving skills. We have never had that before. 2 years ago, we had never had that where every single student was getting it. So we are trying to get that prevention piece going at those younger grades so that they are starting to have some skills as they get up into the older grades. In addition, we also do 2 student and teacher surveys. One is called the Favors that the student takes. The other is called the DESA that teachers do. And those pieces of data help us know if a student feels like there's something that's going on with them or if a teacher is observing things in them. And so we call those screeners. And so we do monitor those 2 to 3 times a year as well. And so we've got curriculum also at the middle school and high school level that I just want to talk about that prevention piece, but also that identifying piece. And then as we've already talked about that the Narcan is available in all schools with staff that are trained to administer it.
So I think that the biggest part of what our goal here tonight was really about how do we start having these conversations and what are the resources that we have available. So we do hope that as you leave, take more than one of the handouts that are there. Share them with others who may not have been here tonight, and have these conversations. It becomes more normalized that we get to talk about the future, and when we can become preventative, when we can become proactive, then we do actually make a change in our future. So I would just like to say, on behalf of the students and the school board and our administration, thank you to the panel for being out here, sharing your information with us. We did record this, as Brian said, and we want to make this available to everybody who didn't have the opportunity to come and can learn from this. And if we need to continue these conversations, if you want to stay after and ask specific questions, the panel is here for that. That may not necessarily be something we want to record because you have personal conversations. That's totally available. But we've started this opportunity. So if parents tonight or tomorrow or have continuing conversations with family members, we have the substance use at ycs.wednet.edu. You can reach out and someone will respond in a very quick manner to help you wherever you're at, whether it's today or it's down the road. So we want this conversation to continue and make a change. So thank you to the panel. Oh, Gary,
one
add
thing
something
to
in
add,
closing.
if I
Yes.
could, please. Drugs do not discriminate. Nor do the manufacturers or the sellers. Our overdose cases come from all walks of life, students, parents, professional workers such as doctors. It's everywhere. Our youngest was 15 and our oldest fentanyl overdose was 77. Yeah, it doesn't matter your ethnic background, your religion, it just doesn't matter. It's everywhere.
Gary, could I just say one last thing?
Please.
Thank you. So hope. Okay, so think about the word hope and hopelessness. Let's start with hopelessness. Hopelessness makes you feel like there is nothing I can do. I am solely a victim. It is going to happen to me. I cannot do anything about it. If there's anything that you leave here tonight, please leave with hope. There is something that you can do about it, and it starts with that conversation. There are resources on this campus and every campus across our district, and it's not just one tiny little thing. We are becoming more comprehensive in our systems of help. So you have support that around you. So those tents that are those pop-up tents we use like in the, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so if you as one person tries to pop open that tent by yourself, if you've ever tried it, it is almost impossible. Even with two people, one person on one side, one person on the other, you try to pull it, it's almost impossible. Even with three, it is almost impossible. It takes like the 4 people on each part of that corner to pull at the same time. So please know that you are not alone. There are people and systems in our district, across our district, that are here to help you to pop open that tent to give the covering to our kids. And so please leave here tonight with hope. And also and not to say that there wasn't anything else that you want to say, but as you go, please grab any of those True North resources that they have and introduce yourself to Gina, who we are so grateful for. Thank you, Terry.
Yeah. Anyone else have a last statement? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming out. I know that your evenings are precious, but this is a pretty important topic. So thank you for being here. And if you would help me thank our panel for spending the evening with us.